What's going on, fam? We are here at the Dream Coach podcast. This is the first ever episode. We are launching this for the first time. And the purpose of this podcast is to kind of pull back the veil or pull back the curtain, so to speak, for people to see, man, online coaching, online entrepreneurship of any kind is a space that has so much potential, is a space where lives are being changed, not only for clients, but also for coaches, people who are purpose driven, people who want to make an impact. And today I have an awesome guest, my friend Hunter. And it's funny because I've only met you once in person and I don't even know if, for like 5 seconds. I think, did I give you one of the hats? I gave you one of the hats, right? The Child of God hat.
I love it.
So we met at a mastermind, which is a fancy name for kind of like a networking slash learning event, in-person event, which is usually a couple of days long. We met in Dallas at a mastermind event hosted by Brandon Forbes. Shout out to Brandon Forbes. He is somebody who has helped us both in our coaching journeys and becoming coaches. And yeah, so we ended up meeting there, and just a space of amazing people, just networking and being motivated, knowing that there's other people on the same journey. So Hunter, bro, I mean, this is going to be learning for those watching and learning even for me, because I don't know your full story. Tell us a little bit about yourself, man. Give us some background. Where are you from? What is your upbringing like? Wherever you want to start, you can go ahead.
Yeah, dude. I love it. So yeah, thanks for having me. And we actually live in the same city, dude. That's what's crazy.
We do.
I don't technically live in Austin, but yeah. So anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm Hunter Sprague. I run a company called Monolith Movement. And so, man, I'm 33 years old, been married for 11 years as of the 4th, May 4th. And we have 3 kids. And so they're 7, 4, and 2 right now. So it's just insane. But
yeah.
Yeah, dude. So I'm a native Texan, grew up here, grew up outside of Dallas, raised kind of in the church, raised in a really good family, hardworking parents. And yeah, man, it was funny. I was on a podcast earlier and he was asking me the same question, and it always hits me like, I'm super weird, dude. Like I'm kind of an enigma. Like I don't know where I fit in, because looking back, it's like growing up, I was into a lot of different things that didn't really make sense, raised in the church. I've always been an artist, loved art class. That was my favorite thing in school. Always been an athlete. So I played soccer my entire life, very competitively. I got started on drums by my dad when I was like 5 or 6, and he was taking me to like go see Ted Nugent and ZZ Top and Van Halen and all this stuff all the time. So that was a big part of my life. But I'm named Hunter for a reason. My dad's a gigantic like bow hunter, outdoorsman. So
that makes sense.
Grew up shooting deer, fishing, all that stuff. And so so like that was my childhood. It was just a lot of very different things. And it was very, very fun. And then, as I got a little bit older, I have 2 older sisters. When the older one got married to my brother-in-law, Keith was just incredible. He was like the brother I never had, and he was just like super creative. He's like a designer. He worked for Nordstrom, like doing all these like window displays and stuff. And so he got me super into design and fashion and all this, fun stuff like that. And it was just a really kind of strange upbringing, because my parents both grew up on like farms with nothing. And then my dad went like super hard into trades and worked super hard and, did a bunch of stuff. And my mom was in finance. So she ended up like, in these very powerful rooms with very powerful people in Dallas. And so I kind of just saw everything, everything I could possibly see. Did a lot of music stuff. I was in a couple bands in high school, went on tour with a metal band after high school, came down here to Austin, And that's when I really got into like photography and film and all that kind of stuff.
Mm,
And
okay.
and so I've done a lot of different things.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's been very fun, very filling. And I think the thing I take away from that is like I've always had to I've had to learn how to adapt to different
Mm,
rooms with different language and different
mm-hmm.
pain points and different personalities and just be
Yeah.
able to like exist there and thrive there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't a small
Adapt.
thing, and just adapt, dude. And but
Mm-hmm.
like now looking back, I see how that's like really um it served me very well because
Mm-hmm.
I can literally go into any conversation or group of people and make friends, like get my point across, all
Mm.
that kind of stuff. And that served me a ton.
Yeah.
And so, but that was kind of always like, yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of been innate in me is just
Mm-hmm.
like, um, uh, just that ability to kind of meet people where they're at, right?
Yeah.
See their
That's a
point of
valuable
view,
skill.
help them to see my point of view,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's yeah, dude. So that's translated very well, obviously,
Yeah.
into
Right.
what we do now. But yeah,
Right. Yeah. No, thank you for that context. And it's so interesting because, you know, with God nothing is ever wasted,
hmm
right? Like everything, the good and the bad, right? When we start walking with him, it's used, right?
yep,
It contributes towards the thing that we do, right? To help
yep,
others and in our story. So you're an online coach now.
yep,
You are a fitness coach for Christian men. Is that correct?
yep,
Okay. So
yes.
before we even get to that, because that's a whole thing to unpack,
hmm
um, what did you do before that? Well, like before you got into online coaching, what were you doing? And eventually talk to us about how you transitioned.
Yeah, dude. So, um, yeah, it's a kind of a wild journey because I after high school, it was like the choice between going and playing soccer in
Mm,
college. That was like one option.
mm-hmm,
I really wanted to do that, or it was going tour with a Christian metal band. And
mm,
I was like, dude, that never happens. Like, I got to take that opportunity.
mm-hmm,
So I went and did that. Figured out that wasn't for me. Right,
mm,
left that band. That's when I moved down here to Austin. Got involved with our current church, and
mm-hmm,
they really discipled me in a lot of the arts and like storytelling, documentary kind of stuff. Filmmaking,
mm.
photography,
That's
uh,
interesting
all that
that a
kind of stuff.
church, yeah,
Yeah. So
took part
yeah.
in
So
that journey. That's
yeah,
very, I've
and it
never
was
heard of
really
that.
crazy because, and I didn't mention this earlier, but I felt like a big part of my calling when I was even a teenager was like I want to see a resurgence of the arts and beauty in the
Mm,
church. Like that was
wow.
like what I was aiming at, right?
Mm-hmm,
And so, and I had like all these skills that I could do that with, right? Like drums, worship, music, production, stuff like that.
mm-hmm,
Um, Design, photography, and then it became filmmaking. And which bled naturally into marketing, all that kind of
right.
stuff, right? And so that was kind of the journey. And when I got to this church, it was almost like it all kind of clicked. Like I've always been wanting to see that happen in a church, and it's
Mm,
happening here. And I just like pressed in really hard, right? And so I did their like residency. So that's what it was all about. Was like, hey, like we're gonna teach you these things, give you these skills, all that kind of stuff.
mm-hmm,
So I did that. During the course of that, I started another band with a few of my buddies, and through that, I met my wife. Right, so I met her
mm,
through music. They're a very musical family. It's a whole long story, but
mm-hmm,
she was up in Fort Worth. I was down here in Dallas or in Austin. Sorry, and so.
mm-hmm,
It was like did the distance thing. I was coming up at the end of my residency, trying to figure out, am I going to do it again? Am I going to like go for a job here?
mm,
All this crazy stuff happened. Ended up getting a job offer in Dallas at a church, right? So I
mm,
moved back to Dallas to my hometown in Forney. Got a job there. It was my first like real job, and I
mm-hmm.
was essentially there like creative director, right? It was like literally
Okay.
only me. It was a lot of guys in the church. It's like you're the guy, like you're young and kind of cool, so like.
You
Here's
fit
our
the bill.
website. Yeah, like here's our, here's all the stuff, right? So it was just kind of thrown into it. It was really crazy, but I had to adapt and figure it all out, right? one-man show, filming, editing, designing, doing photography, playing drums on Sundays, helping with series and marketing and stuff like that. So did that. We got married. We were there for a year or two, and then came back down here to Austin because I had like a worship spot at this church that we're still at the church that, I did the residency at. Came back mainly for that. And the night we were leaving, and it was like I was going to get paid like $250 a week. That was like the thing. That was it. But it was like this big, like, we got to take a risk and just go for it. Like, we want to be here. We want to be around these people. Like, I want to do these kinds of things. And the night before we left, I got a call from a guy that was at the church. He's like, "Hey, I run this nonprofit. I need a guy for like 25 hours a week to be our creative director. Like, would you want to do it?" And I was just like, yeah, of course. So we met, took that job. It was a nonprofit doing like orphan care kind of ministry and stuff like that. So became their creative director, got to go to Cuba with them, got to do a lot of really cool stuff with them. And then I got a job offer at the church that I did the residency at. So I came on staff as I think my title was like film editor and lead photographer. And then that morphed into, filmmaker, lead filmmaker, so that was like what I was doing. I did that for almost 7 years. Yeah. So I got to, so that was like my entire 20s, right? Which is like full-time ministry for a couple different churches and a nonprofit, right? And doing worship the whole time. And that was my life, and so, So
where does online coaching come into the picture?
So what I realized over time, was that, and my story with like fitness was pretty crazy. I almost lost my left arm when I was 8 years old. I almost had it amputated, after an accident. And so like, I was always like super scrawny. I'm 6'2", and I graduated high school at like 160, just like super scrawny, very tall and lanky, like slender man. And only had, about 50% strength left in that arm, way less muscle mass. I eventually kind of rehabbed to like full like function, right? So that was why I got into fitness, like in that realm, into like lifting, I'll say, lifting, diet, nutrition, stuff outside of just like playing soccer and endurance and speed and stuff like that. So got into that, and I just loved it. I was like, wow, this always scared me. I never thought I'd be able to put on any size, and now, like, and then I did. Like, I actually got there. Yeah. So that was like the love of it. Was like, man, I always wanted to do this. Now I'm doing it, right? And just, figuring it out, just like trying things out, learning as much as I could, and, and then going into ministry, getting deeper into ministry is like, started having like, just the kind of hit the wall that everybody hits, right? Of like mental health issues, anxiety, burnout, overwhelm, like all that kind of stuff. And so the fitness side, that it kind of took on a whole new meaning, because it kind of came like, the gym was like one of the only places I felt safe. Wow. Like in the seasons of like panic attacks and like crazy anxiety every day. And like, and so that kind of opened my eyes to a whole new side of it, of more the like lifestyle, wellness, mental health side of things. And because up until that point, it was just like, dude, I just want to get big, I just want to get jacked, like, let's go. And then it kind of took on this whole new power in a way, and so I realized over time, like, man, I'm a very like all in person. So it's like, when I was a kid, it was like airsoft and paintball and all this stuff, right? And then like earlier in my 20s, it was like guns. Like, I loved firearms. I still do, but it was just like to the point, like I was literally doing like firearm photography as a side hustle for a while. I was like, this is so cool. Like, I want to all in, dude. Let's just go.
Yeah.
Like, training all the time, like at the range, like 2 times a week, all that kind of stuff. But I realized that fitness was like one of my longest standing things, because I had done it through soccer in a way, and then I had done it just on my own, for the last several years. And I'd seen the fruit of it. I'd seen how helpful it was, and realized like, man, this isn't just like a hobby. Like, this is like lifeblood in a lot of ways. This is a very helpful tool, Yeah. And so then so I'm on staff at this church, and then we came to COVID, right? Yeah. And I had already kind of been through my like dark night of the soul, right? So I had a lot of tools and a lot of resilience built up to that point. It was still really hard. Obviously, it was just total chaos and
Mm.
confusion and isolation and all that kind of stuff. It was terrible. And even if I never even got sick, but it was still really hard, right?
Right.
But I was watching a lot of these guys around me, and what I started noticing some patterns, right? Of these guys, they're really faithful men. They love the Lord. They're good husbands. They're good fathers, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot of head knowledge. They, they got the degrees, they got the MDiv, they got the PhD in theology. They've read the books, they've written the books, they've been at the conferences, they've spoken at the conferences. This is their
Mm-hmm.
whole world, right?
Yeah.
They have all of the theology, they have all of the doctrine, and they are miserable right now.
Mm.
Right, is what I realized. And it wasn't a thing of the Lord's not powerful. It was the thing of their head knowledge is not enough.
Mm.
And at least from my perspective, a lot of their issue, the reason that they're so freaked out by COVID is because they haven't taken care of themselves, right? They're not healthy physically. And then that led to them being very unhealthy mentally, right? Doing great spiritually, but these other sides of them not doing well at all, right? And so I was just watching, and I kind of, it was weird because I just kind of became the guy. And it was a very big church, 8,000 people, 200 people on staff, right? And to a lot of people, I was just kind of the dude, if you had a fitness or wellness or supplement question, you'd come talk to me, for whatever reason, right? And I realized I just loved it, dude. That was my favorite conversation that I would have. And I have notes.
That's a
on my
big
phone.
indicator.
It was crazy. I have notes on my phone that was just marking that, writing that down. I loved that. And there's something there. I need to pay attention to that. And so, so long story short, I'm 5 years in to being on staff, which you get a sabbatical at that point. And going into that sabbatical, I'm man, I can't remember what year that was. It's a few years ago. But I remember that just getting that tension. A lot of people in ministry feel, right, where you're just is this it? Am I still called to this? Or is there a new calling? Or at least a new assignment, right? And I think there's a difference between those two things. I think calling generally stays pretty much the same. That speaks to more who you are and what you embody, who you are for others, right?
Regardless of what position you have.
Yes. An assignment's more this job or that job, right?
Right.
Regardless, you should be the same person, right? And that's kind of how I would, kind of separate those things. But
yeah, if we could just pause there real quick and maybe process that, because I know, and I'm sure there will be a number of people who may listen to this, and their view is that my calling and my assignment are one, and all I can be and all I should be is a pastor or in full-time ministry or full-time staff or whatever it is, right? And I think even for me, right, because I was pastoring prior to this as well, there has to be this kind of breaking off of this idea that working within the church, as in the organization, is the only way to do God's work.
Right.
And if you could talk maybe a little bit more on that, and because I think that's something that has to be fleshed out. A lot of people haven't really thought that through.
Yeah, no, that's super true. I mean, I think the reality is there's a lot of guys that are in ministry that would have tenfold the impact in the marketplace that they do right now, and vice versa, right? I think there's a season for everything. I've heard it said, from older, wiser men, you'll probably have 20 or 30 assignments in your life, right? That is constantly changing. And that might be small tweaks. It might be I'm moving across ministries in the same church, right?
Yeah.
I'm going from creative ministry to men's ministry, or I'm going from, HR to heading a campus, or I'm going from, whatever it is, right? I'm going to go from being a youth pastor to being a worship pastor, whatever that might be. Or you're leaving that church to go to another church, or that church to go to a ministry of sorts, or a nonprofit of sorts, or it's and again, I think the calling overall is just to, at its base, right, is just to embody certain things, right? Christ likeness, that comes more to your character. How do you work? Regardless of
Yeah.
what the work is, how do you do that work, right? Because
Yeah.
it is very important for you to work, obviously, as unto the Lord, as we know, whether you're
Mm-hmm.
an accountant or a coach or a cop or,
Mm.
a pastor. And I think those are all valid things. I think it's kind of weird for us in our context because ministry has become a career path,
Yeah.
and I think for the most part, historically, that's kind of a strange concept,
Mm.
I personally think that what I'm seeing, again, I could be way off on this, or this could be kind of a lowercase profit kind of thing, but it could be like, I think bivocational ministry will probably be the future.
Mm.
And so,
I've heard the same.
yeah, and I think that's just all signs seem to point that way. And
Mm.
again, it's not better or worse. It's just different. And it's just, following, man, what are the needs of today?
Right.
What does my family need?
Yeah.
What does my wife need? What do my kids need? What do I need just as a
Mm-hmm.
man professionally and all that kind of stuff. And so, again, I think it's completely a matter of freedom.
Yeah.
It all comes down to the heart. Why are you in ministry?
Yeah.
Right? Because there are a lot of people that they're in it because they love it. They're gifted at it. That's clearly where they're assigned, where they're called.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't imagine doing anything else, right? There are other people that are there because it's safe and comfortable,
Mm.
right? And it's just enough, right? It's just enough money to scrape by.
Yeah.
It's enough freedom. They know they're not going to get fired unless
Mm.
they have some giant moral failing.
Mm-hmm.
And man, if I need to come in at noon on a Wednesday, that's fine. Nobody really cares, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of people's reality, right?
Yeah.
And then
I
there are
want
other
to,
people. Yeah, go for it.
yeah, really quick. I want to go back to something that you said.
Yeah.
You said that there are people working in the church that could have tenfold
Mhm.
more impact in the marketplace or outside of the church.
Yes.
Like, what? Elaborate a little bit on that. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So I mean, there, and I've seen this a lot, dude. And I've kind of followed in these guys' paths, right? Like when I left ministry to go be an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
like we are, right?
Yeah.
I followed about 10 other guys, right, that
Mm.
had left similar roles. They were good friends that
Mm.
left over the previous year or two or three, and I realized that there was a way different mindset and set of giftings and
Mhm.
talents. And what I saw is that, man, we in our mind were trying to like mold the ministry into like our frame of reference, if that makes sense, right?
Okay.
And the ministry almost shouldn't be that way,
Mhm.
right? The ministry shouldn't. In some ways, it has to operate like a business. It just
Mhm.
does. I mean, you're dealing with money and buildings and assets and giving and people and salaries and roles, and
Mhm.
that's totally true, right? But what I realized is like, man, my giftings were more in drawing attention and getting ideas across,
Mhm.
and so like that kind of marketing, kind of sales
Yeah.
kind of aspect, right? And I realized that like that's just where my mind goes. It's not right or wrong, right? But
Mhm.
that might not be the best thing when I'm creating art for the church, right? Because
Mhm.
is my mind more am I putting, views and shares and plays,
Mhm.
the ones from random strangers that don't even go to our church over,
Mhm.
how this is impacting the people that are in our seats
Yeah.
locally, right? And again,
Right.
I don't think either of those things are right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's just like you could see how there could be some tension, right?
For sure.
And so there's going to be this kind of, you're moving at a different pace
Mhm.
with ministry, right? And the fact is like every ministry that exists, it is largely held up by the guys that can write checks for 5, 10, 15, 20 million dollars.
Mm.
It just is, dude. It's not right or wrong. It's beautiful. Like, praise God that can happen. But somebody has to do that, right? So somebody has to, it's like, man, I have the skill sets and the resolve and the resilience and the ideas to go out and do that, so that, hey, that's now my ministry, right? Somebody also has to go out and be sent out to be like, hey, I'm going to be the representative in real estate, in nursing, in law enforcement, in whatever, right? Because if I don't, who is? Right.
Yeah.
Not to say that it's all about me, but like there's always going to be those gaps, right?
Yeah.
And so, if I have the heart of a pastor, the heart of a teacher, I have the wisdom from Scripture, but I also have the skills to build a business or to be a good CPA, right? Why would I not do that? Right. And a lot of that, man, I saw my mom model this very, very well. I mean, my mom is like C-level at a, $30 billion bank, right? She started as a bank teller, but the thing that got her to the C-suite was not because she's so good at math, right? The thing that got her there is because she's pastoral and she cares for people, and she's sitting across the table. I'm not going to say who it is, but sitting across her desk from the parents of A-list celebrity actors that just had a drug overdose and can meet them in their darkest moment, right? And so, like, somebody has to go do that, right?
Yeah. Beyond just the details or the responsibilities on paper of what the job is, going above and beyond through your character, through who you are.
Yes, exactly. Because that's the thing that's lacking. There's a lot of people that have all the skill in the world, but they don't have the character, right?
Yeah.
And so,
being the light of the world.
Yeah,
essentially,
exactly.
in whatever space you're in,
and having impact that way, And so, again, there's just going to be, I think for a lot of people, there's going to be an appetite that the ministry can't and shouldn't quench. I'll say it that way, right?
Gotcha.
And so, again, when you're in ministry, like, the best thing you can do is be submitted to the vision, right? Be submitted to the way, not that everything just needs to be business as usual. Like, you can certainly raise questions. Hey, could we make this better? Could we do this differently? That needs to happen. That always needs to happen, right?
Yeah.
But I think for a lot of guys, they kind of like come to that wall and they're just like, again, not right or wrong, but it's just different. And it's like, what I want to put my hands to is just different than what these people want and need. And so I'm the problem here. They're not the problem. They're doing exactly what they should do. And so maybe my skill set, my mind, my heart would be better used out there.
Yeah.
And then, but it all comes full circle at the end of the day, right? Because it's just like, hey, if you're going to go out and do, be in the market in whatever way, it is that thing of just, man, have character, innovate, like, be the best person to oversee, be the best person to work for, be the best person to walk alongside. It's like First Peter, it's like, let your conduct, I'm going to botch it, right? But it's talking about, man, letting your conduct be to a certain standard. That way, when the Gentiles look at you, they are blameless on the day of visitation, right? You might remember that verse correctly. I'm not right now. I'm sorry.
No, that's it. It's good.
But it's just the thought of, like, that is a part of our job, it's just to, and again, that's how that's what it makes me think, right? It's just like, hey, there's going to be these people that are unbelievers, that are Gentiles, and they need to look at you and basically be like, man, I got no excuse, because hey, I might hate the church, I might hate Christianity, I might hate religion, I have all this baggage, I have all this hurt, but I watched Hunter and Chris and the way that they ran their lives, right? The self-control they had, the discipline they had, the innovation, the creativity, how well they cared for people. They still took care of themselves. They're great husbands. They're great fathers. And dude, that just spoke to me. And I saw that something was different, right?
Yeah.
Again, somebody has to go and be that example, right? Somebody
Mm-hmm.
has to go out and make a ton of money so that there is a war chest for the
Mm-hmm.
mission, right? Somebody has to do that. Somebody has to go out and create products that are
Mm-hmm.
going to be used by the church at like planning center,
Mm-hmm.
like somebody had to go do that,
Mm.
right? And somebody had to step outside of the walls of the church and get those skills and have those conversations and build the thing and take the risk, right? And then
Yeah.
ultimately, again, it comes full circle. It all comes back to the church, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
might not be literally within the four walls, but you're out there and you're innovating and you're doing something that ultimately you're going to have some level of impact with,
Yeah.
right? And so
It's good.
not right or wrong by any means. It's completely an area of freedom.
Yeah.
And I think most people need to understand, like, dude, the church is not yours. This is not
Mm.
your church, man. This does not belong to you. Like, you've been placed here for X amount of time. You don't know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something to steward, right? But
Yeah.
also your gifts and your talents and your vision are also something to steward well, right?
Yeah.
And so there is there are a lot of people out there, right? It sounds harsh, but like their talents in a way are being buried in the church, right? And they would actually
100%.
be multiplied if they're out there. And again, vice versa, dude. There are people out there in the marketplace making a ton of money, but their talents are being buried right now because that's
Mm-hmm.
just safe and normal. It's not doing anything, and they're
Right.
miserable. And those people need to get inside the ministry, and they're
Yeah.
gonna thrive. Yeah.
And I think many churches have become like a social club,
Hmm.
and it's really just a place for people to hang out. And again, their gifts aren't being used. And really it's again, make disciples of all nations,
Hmm.
go out, right? Is really the vision that God has for us. And I even think of Paul,
Hmm.
in the book of Acts. I mean, this guy is a tent maker,
Yep.
and he's an entrepreneur. He
Yep.
has his business. He's doing a service for other people in order to earn money
Yep.
so that he doesn't have to fully depend on the churches.
Yes.
And then the churches say, dude, you're just taking advantage of us. You're just taking our money.
Yep.
He's like, no, I don't even want that to be an accusation. I'm going to work
Hmm.
so that we are blameless, right? And he teaches the other missionaries, right, to do the same as
Yep.
well. So that goes in line with the bivocational thought.
Hundred
So
percent.
I want to go back to your journey, and so you're at this place, you have these marketing skills, you have these sales skills, you're doing a lot of these things for churches. So at what point do you decide, you know what, I'm going to become my own,
Yeah.
entrepreneur with my own business?
Yeah.
Like, what did that look like? Did you come across like a coaching program, or like did you come
Yeah.
across like a video that like showed you how? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah. It was kind of a funny story because it was like the first step was just like I want to just take the plunge and just
Mm-hmm.
start an Instagram. Right. There
Mm-hmm.
was no thought of like monetizing it.
Mm-hmm.
I figured I would. I didn't know how. Right. But it was more so, um, I have this vision in my head and I want to start this conversation. So
Mm-hmm.
let's do that. So I did that, started posting, and it just got a lot of traction really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I was still kind of in that like, man, what am I doing with this? So I
Mm-hmm.
was like, do I like sell ebooks? Like, do I start a
Mm.
YouTube? Do I do like an apparel line? Like, what do I do here? And,
Right.
um, and I had kind of thought about coaching, but I think there was a big limiting belief in me of like, I just never done it. Right. Like, I know my path. Like, I know what worked for me. I know it works in theory, but would this
Yeah.
actually translate in reality for other people? Right.
Mm.
And so I'm going through all this stuff, trying to figure it out. Um, and I, I came across an ad on Instagram. And it was from this guy,
Mm.
Brandon Forbes. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, this speaks to me. It's crazy. So I sent him a message. We got on a call the next day. And he was just like, straight up, dude, I think that coaching is going to be the best route
Mm.
by far, right? It's going to be the most impact, the best business to run, obviously finances, like financially, revenue wise, like
Mm-hmm.
this is what you should do. Like, would you want
Mm.
me to help you get that started? Right. And that was the first
Mm-hmm.
like big risk, like
Mm.
not the first big risk, but it was one of those deals like I'd never done anything like that. Right. And it's like,
Right.
dude, I don't know what it was, like $4,000. I
Mm-hmm.
was actually the first guy that he ever hired or he ever signed
Wow.
from an ad,
Okay.
which is a big deal because Brandon's
Yeah.
like the lord of ads on Instagram. But
Yeah.
it's pretty funny. So got into his program, really helped me like build it, figure out what it was going to be, kind of put the offer together. And I started throwing it out. And it was really funny because I had like, I don't know, I think this was probably in like September, October. I had 10 clients by December. And it was really funny because it was like, a couple guys like I knew, a couple guys that I had met like one time.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, dude, like, hey, we met 5 years ago and I saw this and yeah, dude, let's talk. I've been needing
You never
like
know
that.
who will be interested.
Dude, people always come out of the frameworks. It's really out of the woodworks. It's really funny to see because you'll have a lot of people that are like you're really close to, and they just don't get it at all. You're like, oh, good for you, and then there'll be some random person from high school that like you haven't spoken to in 10 years, and they're like, bro, I've been watching everything you post. This is so sick. Like I want to
never know. Oh man,
and
that's crazy.
It's really cool.
Yeah,
it's really cool to see. And so then it became like a side hustle. So I'm running it. I'm getting clients, like getting them results.
By the way,
dude, man, maybe like 2022. I want to say
2022. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, and because it was definitely post COVID, but it was like kind of in when everything felt like it was really like opening up. So I think it was 2022.
Okay.
Like
yeah,
that's
like about the time
back to
when
normal.
Things started opening up. Yeah.
And so I could go back, but yeah. So no, definitely. Yeah. So September 2022, that was when I got my like first payment. Right. So this September we'll make three full years of like getting paid to do this. Right.
That's big.
And
so what did it look like in terms of crafting your offer? Like, how did you even decide like what you were going to do in helping people?
It was a mess, but it was kind of like, I know muscle's a really big deal. Like I was like, I'm sold on that. And so I called it, but I also wanted this big like mindset kind of like, I want to like train you up like, on a deeper level.
Like so as a person.
So I ended up calling it muscle discipleship. And I've kept that the entire time, right? So the first iteration was like getting the fitness side to a really good spot, So it was like, all right, like testing some things out, diets, splits, modes of operating, like just all the things.
Okay, was it like a flat goal for everybody to attain, or was it personalized based on?
It was very personalized, and I would just like write out this huge PDF of like 10 pages, and I'd be like, here you go, here's your plan,
Yeah.
Come meet with me whenever you need me, So then it was the realization of like, okay, these guys are very lonely and they need community. So let's start a community, right? So I started that. And then it was like, okay, I need some better tools. So I started, I got my own app. And then it was like, okay, we need more resources. So we went from Slack to school and built a course. And then, so it's kind of been like reiterated this entire time, and to the point now where it's like, I'm, basically the goal is like to get the discipleship part all the way up to where the like muscle part is, in a way. And so like I brought on one of my clients as like a spiritual advisor, right?
Nice.
And so he's like meeting with guys one-on-one once or twice a month, doing this like inner healing prayer and stuff like that. And then,
that's powerful.
Trying to create like a kind of a smaller group system where it's like I have a guy that's been through this for a while and he can take on a couple guys under his wing. So it's like you have me all the time, you have the community all the time, you have group calls, you have you can go meet with this advisor guy, you have your group of 2 or 3 that you can text with. It's just like multiple layers
of community
support and community, but then also all the resources you would ever need, the right tools in the app, like and I tell people all the time, like the fitness part of what I do is like the easiest part. Like it's like if you just literally do what I say, like you'll get wherever you want.
Right.
But this is the deeper stuff that I'm really after, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So now, but yeah, so that was kind of the journey, was just like kind of reiterating it. And then I remember I was coming into my sabbatical. It was over a summer, a few summers ago. And I was just at that spot, like mentally of like, dude, I really got to figure this out. I think I was turning 30. I just turned 33 this like earlier in April. I just turned 33 this year.
Happy birthday.
But dude, thank you.
Belated.
It's a very boring, doesn't really mean anything. But 30 was crazy, man, because it was like, man, what am I doing? You know, what am I doing with my life? Again, that same thing. Is this where I'm called? Is this where I'm assigned or whatever? You know, do I want to be out there? I definitely know I want to go and like make more money, whatever that means.
At
You
this
know,
point, you already have your business.
I have my
It's
business.
growing.
It's
You're having
growing. It's not like you know, at that point. I think at that point, I really started to have that conversation with myself when I like
mm,
matched my salary. So I
mm,
had my ministry salary.
mm-hmm,
Coaching ended up matching that.
mm,
But then it was still like, but you know, that's not that much money. And I don't have, you know, I wouldn't have insurance through that. And, you know, just
right.
all the stuff, right? Just, I
Yeah.
kept moving the goalposts, you know?
Mm,
And so I was like, man, maybe I should go out and, um, look for another job, you know? So
mm,
like I got to talking to a really big church in Dallas.
mm-hmm,
Got an offer from them. I was talking to like it's kind of funny, like a really big trailer company out in East Texas.
mm,
Come do marketing there.
mm-hmm,
Got an offer from them. Had a couple different, you know, just met random people. Was like, hey, would you want to come like sell, you know, sell whatever, you know, like
mm-hmm,
maybe let's try that. And it was a really interesting season because it was like a lot of my anxiety was like, am I worth anything out in the marketplace? You
mm.
know, I've only been in ministry. So like I just
So really quick, if I
yeah.
could interject, where do you think that was coming from? Because you mentioned at first, right? You went from joining this coaching program, a couple months later, you got 10
Mhm.
clients, slowly but surely growing. What do you think what was the contributor that made you start questioning, like, man, should I really like keep building this thing, right? Because we need to count the cost, right? That's even a
Yes.
biblical principle
Yeah.
too.
Man, I think it was just the lack of certainty, you know.
Mm,
I had always been at least for the longest while, you know, just in a
mm-hmm,
very like safe
mm-hmm.
environment where I did really well. You know, I wasn't going to get let go. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, like, for me, like when I was speaking earlier about the guys in ministry, like that was me. You know, like, it was like I've kind of hit my ceiling.
Mm,
And so there were all these options, you know, and that's, I think that there was a huge anxiety in me of like, yeah, am I worth it out there just because I didn't know anything else? Right.
mm-hmm,
This is all I'd ever done. And, so to be in a completely different environment, doing a different thing, it was just super scary to me.
mm,
And so for me, it was asking the question of like, well, can I like kind of go higher here? Like, could
yeah.
I be over, you know, I'm on this smaller team. Could I be over, you know, over this team and another team? Could I be
Mm-hmm,
in a different ministry here? Right. It's
mm-hmm.
more aligned with what I want to do now. You know, could
Yeah.
I do that? Could I go to a different church and do something? Could I go, you know, do marketing? Could I go do sales? But at the same time, I still had this thing, this monolith thing. And,
Mm-hmm,
and so for me, it was a really funny season because it was like, again, like I had all this anxiety, but then it was like the Lord just put all these opportunities in my lap. To me, I took it as like, hey, here you go.
mm,
Like, here's an opportunity. This is evidence of my provision
yeah.
and that you are worth it. Like, you are, you know, worthy. You
Mm,
are wanted,
mm-hmm,
right? But not yet.
mm,
Just say no, you know? And so that kept happening. And it was just like, opportunity came. Awesome. It's a route I could go.
mm,
I'm desired there, but not yet. So, no. And
mm,
then that happened like 3 or 4 times. And what I kept coming back to was like, dude, I have this thing monolith, right?
mm-hmm.
I have this thing. I've seen what it could do. You know, I'm barely putting any time into it and it's doing
Mm-hmm.
this. So
Yeah.
what would happen if I just went all in? And here's the
Mm.
potential of that. And then
Barely putting any time into it, and you matched your salary.
right, yes. And then
Wow.
I doubled it, you know. And so then it was like,
Wow.
you know, so it was just like all the numbers made perfect sense, you know,
Yeah.
at a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just that was super appealing to me because it was like, okay, this is my thing. We
Yeah.
don't have to like up and relocate our entire family to do
Mm-hmm.
this, right? I don't have to be on somebody else's timeline and schedule. And this is my thing. This is, and I was very convinced at that point, like this is where like real wealth would be built,
Mm.
right? And it's funny because I was, you know, even with like, you know, one of the jobs I was offered, they're like, hey, you know, we want to like grow you into a CMO, you know, and that role starts at $200,000 a year.
Wow.
And I was like, holy crap, dude. I
The
cannot
security.
even imagine that.
Yeah.
That's insane. That's generational wealth, you know, is what I
There you
had in my
go.
mind. And, you know, and being in ministry, it was just like, you know, like I was just thinking, dude, I can't imagine what it'd be like to make 10 grand in a month. That'd be crazy, dude. Like that'd be so crazy.
Wow.
And
It's crazy how the space that you're in just influences what
oh,
you
dude.
view as
Yeah,
like
because the
possible.
ceiling was like so low, you know, it
Right.
was just like I was capped out, you know, at like 52,000 a year, you know. And there just wasn't much like upward mobility, you know. It's
Right.
fine. There didn't need to be. It's just like
Yeah.
it was just again, I kind of had like outgrown that thing based on my skills and desires, right? And so I yes, that was the whole thing, man. And it just kind of kept coming back to that. In fear, I kept moving the goalposts, you know. But then eventually it kind of came to a point where I was working on it a lot, right? And it was making really good money, still doing ministry. I'm burnt out. I'm barely present as a father, as a husband. And it was just like I would wake up, dude. I would take a sales call all on the way into the office. I would work all morning, take a sales call over lunch, work the afternoon, take 2 or 3 sales calls at night. And that was like my day, a lot of days.
Wow.
And I got to a point I was like, dude, I gotta pick one or they're both gonna just implode, right?
Wow.
And I'm not healthy right now. So so had those decisions and it was blessed. It was like, we affirm this in you, like go for it, dude. We're super proud of you. Let us know what you need.
So you brought that before your leaders,
yeah,
and they gave their blessing as well.
yes, yeah,
Wow.
which is a big deal.
Yeah.
It kind of made a path for me to like kind of exit. And then my last month in ministry was, you know, I got to, you know, like $11,000, you know,
Wow.
with coaching, which was like a huge deal. You know, it was very much a like, okay, like this can be done. You know, it's all right.
Once you hit that first 10K month, it's like, all right, like there's something here. I just gotta keep hitting it in the same spot.
Sky's the limit, you know.
Yeah.
But I was so burnt out, you know. So like I took, you know, I got out of ministry, and I took like a whole month where I was like, I'm barely doing anything, dude. And that's just what I had to do, you know. So then just kind of started ramping it back up. So I was in Brandon's program. By this point, I was like way like well done with his stuff. So at a certain point in there, I went in and I worked with Trey Cockrum for a while.
Okay, I'm not familiar with him.
Yeah, Trey's great. He's a really really good dude. And worked with him. He helped me kind of like scale it a little bit better, get some other things in place. And then that agreement ended with him. And then, dude, it's like this last year, you know, of 2024, that was like my first like full like calendar year, you know, of coaching full time. So,
wow.
And it was really good. It was really hard. There were a lot of things like unrelated to coaching, like just things that happened in our church and like that just, dude, it was just crazy. Like there was just a lot of last year. I felt pretty like I'm useless right now, you know?
Oh man.
But it was fine, you know, got through it and I did well, you know. It wasn't an insane year, but it was like, man, it was, you know, the goal was just like more than ministry, you know, in terms of like finances, obviously.
Right.
And so did that. And then, and then last fall, you know, I was like, okay, like I really want to scale now. Like I'm like really kind of tired of this level I'm at. I'm ready to like really push it up and, you know, and so, came back on with Brandon Forbes and, like late last year. And then, man, since then it's been wild. Like, cause you know, kind of shored a lot of stuff up, got a setter in. And then, you know, it's like in January hit of this year.
What is a setter?
Yeah.
Just for those that
So
don't
setter
know.
is like
Let's break it
manna
down.
from heaven, dude. A setter is like the greatest thing that could ever exist. But basically, it's a person. It's just usually like a contract, you know, paid, you know, however you want to do it, right? Percentage of cash collected, base pay plus that, or just, you know, per meeting, but essentially their whole job is to get into your DMs, whether that's, Instagram, Facebook, wherever it may be, right? Whatever your funnel is. And they both, they kind of take inbound leads. So people that are like messaging you, and they
that
have
are
a
interested in
conversation.
your program.
Yes. Yeah. So either inbounds or they're doing, like we don't do this, but they might do some like outbound stuff where it's like you're like, hey, dude, like, thanks for whatever, like saw you, liked our thing or, left a comment like, what's up, man? How's your whatever going, So, just so you know, pretty much everybody that any coach that you're dealing with on Instagram is probably a setter. Hate to say it. It's probably not them, but the reason is because that stuff takes a lot of time, dude.
Conversations.
And that was a big thing for me to realize, because I had a lot of inbounds. I mean, there are a lot of days I'd get 30, 40, 50 inbound messages a day. But it was just me, right?
Yeah.
And so the vast majority of those just kind of got dropped through the floorboards, because I couldn't keep up with that volume. And so it has been an absolute game changer, because basically, all they do is they just, talk to people. And the whole purpose is, hey, kind of vet this person. Is this somebody that is a good fit? Are the pain points there? Is the desire there? Like all that kind of stuff. Is this something we can help them with? If so, let's get on a call. Okay, cool. We'll go do a discovery call. They're going to like kind of schedule all that. And then, you or your closer, gets on that call and hopefully closes the deal. Right. And so, so it frees up a lot of time. So, got that in place. Went into January, did really well out of the gate in January. And then we went to this live events where I met Chris. And I got home and we had a week left in January. And in that week, I think I did $14,000.
Wow.
And so I hit 25K. Yeah. So I hit 25K for January.
Wow.
And then I just kind of came down from the high of that in February. And I was like, oh, crap. Like, what do I do now? And then I did it again. Which was really crazy. So back-to-back 25K months. February was actually a little bit higher. And then came into March. March wasn't incredible. But still, it's like, again, I was just kind of going back to like, dude, I used to freak out about a 10K month, And now that feels like the worst thing in the world, right? That's what's funny is like, that's like, dude, I suck. I should give this up. But it is kind of funny just to show you like what's possible of like, again, I used to dream of a 10K month, right?
Yeah.
And then it happens, right? And then it happens in a week. And then it happens in a freaking day. And then, so you're just like, it's crazy how much
your brain.
It breaks your brain, dude. And so you're like that, the level that you're operating on just gets a lot higher. That comes with its own, issues, obviously. And there's different problems to solve.
Responsibilities.
Different responsibilities. But like all that stuff is very, very much possible for sure.
Dude,
it's wild. So
incredible. Do you think online coaching is for everybody? Or what type of person is online coaching for?
Man, I definitely don't think it's for everybody. I think inherently you have to wear a lot of different hats. And so if you're like one of those people that can kind of juggle a lot of things at the same time, I think you could do it. I think one of the areas where people get into some difficulty is because they have the knowledge of the thing they're trying to teach.
Right.
But they have no idea how to market that in a way that makes sense. And they also don't know how to sell it. Right. And so I see that, especially in the fitness space, I see that all the time because now there's this massive push for like, personal trainers that are in person to like move to online. Right. And a lot of them can totally do it. A lot of them is going to be very, very hard, right? Because they're going to have to, the hump that they're going to have to get over is like, I'm the face now, These things have to come from my mouth. This has to be my ideas. And, I have to, somebody else is not selling for me, right? Somebody else is not marketing for me. I have to do that now, right? And I don't have the backing of, I say the backing, it's not really backing, but just, of LA or Golds or, like I don't have their structure. I'm on my own, And so there are a lot of guys that I've seen that, again, they're great at the literal thing, but it's
helping people get fit.
Yes, but but none of that matters if nobody knows who you are or what you do, right?
Mm,
And you can't, help them to come to the understanding that your way is the best way, right?
mm,
And so, and that's hard because when it comes down to it, like you and I don't sell information.
mm-hmm,
Like that's kind of a dumb thing to sell. Nobody needs to buy information, right?
mm,
Um, it's all out there for free. So if that's all that you have, it's just information. But you,
mm-hmm.
um, again, you don't have the character and the personality and the interpersonal skills, right? Kind of that like pastoral ability,
Right.
the counselor.
Mm-hmm,
You also, so again, I'm not saying that's a don't do it. I'm saying that like that's what it's going to require for you to be really successful,
mm-hmm.
is to kind of either be, get pretty good at all of those things, or you have enough money to hire the people that can do those things for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are kind of the two routes, the two
Yeah.
options. So I definitely, I don't know if it's for everybody, but I think on the other side, I would say most people do have some gifts that
Mm-hmm.
um, that only, I mean, honestly, only they have in the way that
Right.
they've, kind of gone through that thing and that experience and that know-how. And that's super valuable.
Yeah.
And so, um, so I know that's kind of a hard answer, but it's like, it's just that tension of like, hey, you can absolutely do this, and there is something that you have to say,
Mm-hmm.
and but it's going to require a lot, right? It's going
Yeah.
to require like you kind of learning some things. It's not going to be automatic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And two things can be true at the same time, right? Like you
Right.
can have a very interesting story and gone through a lot and have some great skills. At the same time, nobody can care who you are,
Mm,
right? And so it's kind of a lot of this is just filling the gaps. What's
mm-hmm.
cool about it though is if you're kind of considering this as like a as a path, is like you're gonna learn the skills that, I mean, everybody is desperate for,
Mm,
and you're gonna have to kind of learn all of them at the same time, right? And so um, if you can you could, because I mean the skills that are required is getting attention, right?
yeah.
It's relaying
Marketing.
ideas, it's marketing, it's simplifying complex things,
Mm-hmm.
it's selling your way, your
Mm-hmm.
method, your product, right? That stuff, like that is how people build wealth.
Right.
Literally just that stuff. There's not
Yeah.
really another way to build wealth. It's literally just that stuff. And so that's
Yeah.
what's cool about it is that, hey, you're kind of thrown into the fire, the frying pan, and you have to, it's kind of sink or swim, and you have to really wrap your head around those things and acquire the skills.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be a lot of deficits and deficiencies where you're going to have to press in and grow. But
Yeah.
that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Because I
It
think
develops you as a person,
it
for sure.
develops you for sure. Because I think a lot of people that are
Yeah.
interested in this kind of thing are the people that are like, they're just bored, dude. It's not
Mm-hmm.
that their job right now is like so hard, or like
Mm-hmm.
it's not, they're just, I think they're just bored and they want to
Yeah.
have impact, right? They want to do something that's very true to them, that kind of
Right.
allows like their story to come out and be used for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just very few ways to make that happen outside of coaching. So that's the other side of it,
Mm-hmm.
that is the other side of it. So,
Yeah.
um,
That's
not
good.
not for everybody, but nothing's for everybody, right?
Right.
So I think it just requires a level of discernment and wisdom, and
Mm-hmm.
again, just that kind of ability to be humble, accept help, seek help, invest in help, gain
Yeah.
skills. Um,
If you don't
and
mind me
yeah,
asking, how much have you invested into yourself in order to get to where you are now in your online coaching
yeah,
business?
dude, it's a great question. We were talking about this before we started rolling. I had a couple of like sales calls, discovery calls yesterday, and for some reason I brought this up, on the call of like, hey man, like how much do you think I've invested into myself to be in the place that I'm at right now, right?
Mm.
And both of those guys said, man, elite, like over, they're like six figures, dude, for sure, six figures. And I was telling Chris that, and I was like, I don't know why they said that, and I don't know what to think about it. But he was like, dude, that's super encouraging. So the
Yeah.
number, I mean, it's a little over $30,000 is what I've invested into myself.
Yeah.
And so at this point, right? But I'm even, and you'd agree with this, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's been so powerful that
Yeah.
I'll never not have a coach of some sort.
Mm,
Never, dude.
mm,
And again, it might shift around, right? I'm still kind of in this
yeah.
building phase. My business is really young,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I'm still deciding what I want it to be. So there is a lot of
Yeah.
like, it's like kind of more, I'm in the kind of logistics, like scaling kind of headspace, right?
Mm-hmm.
At a certain point, I'd like to think I'd be a little bit like, okay, cool, like mission accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
I could go bigger and from here if I wanted to. I don't know if I do.
Yeah.
This is a good scale. I like this. This is a good
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle, that kind of stuff. And so then it becomes, man, there's all sorts of people I'd love to, work with. And a lot of that's
Mm-hmm.
just like, guys that work on mindset or,
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. It'd be
Yeah.
cool. I just, that's the fun part. Like, that's a part of the reason that I want more, revenue and wealth, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
so that, that is a big thing that we invest in as a
Yeah.
family for sure. Because it'd be like, oh, dude, like what would it look like to go hit up, I don't know, whoever, and get them
Mm-hmm.
to one-on-one coach you,
Right.
in bodybuilding,
Mm.
in, your marriage as a father, in,
Mm-hmm.
dude, whatever. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, one thing I want to really do is, and I'm in planning stages of, launching like a lifestyle brand, like an apparel
Mm.
brand that's attached to Monolith. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, dude, I'll hire somebody that's already done that so
Yeah.
that they can fast track me to get to where they're at so that I don't have
That's
to
it.
sit here and bang my head against the wall
That's it.
because I don't know what I don't know.
Right.
And so that's yeah. So that's where
That's
I'm at this
good.
point, dude. So it'll,
Yeah. So
a little over
30K.
30K
Yeah.
and counting.
Invested into yourself
Yep.
to get to where you are in terms of understanding business,
Right.
understanding even the fulfillment component
Yep.
of, mindset
Yep.
and fitness and everything. And in turn, you've made almost like 30K in a month,
Hmm.
right? So like that's kind of like the breaking of the limiting belief, right? That I think
Yes.
I had to go through, you had to go through, a lot of
Yeah.
people had to go through to say, you know what? I'm willing to invest $30,000 over the course of a couple years,
Yeah.
right? In order for me to make that in a month,
Yes.
right?
100%.
And
Yeah.
that's the type of mindset and the type of person that thrives in this environment.
Yes.
If
Yeah.
you're a person with a scarcity mindset,
Uh-huh.
and if you're a person that's constantly moving out of fear and anxiety, you're not going to make it in this space.
Yeah.
Like, you have to train yourself to see abundance where
Yes.
where it seems like there's no abundance, right?
Yeah.
My coach, or one of my coaches, Myron Golden,
Hmm.
um, he integrates a lot of scripture into like his coaching and teaching. And one of the stories that he used was the story of Hagar
Hmm.
in the desert with Ishmael after they get cast out. For those who don't know, it's basically a story where Abraham is promised that he's going to have a kid. He's too old. His wife is too old. His wife has a bright idea and says, "You know what? God said that we're going to have a kid. So let's try and accelerate this. How about you sleep with, our servant girl, and that'll be the kid that God is promising us." And they end up doing it. The wife ends up getting jealous and says, "You know what? Get this lady and get this kid out of here. I'm tired of them." So they end up leaving. And in the desert, Hagar, which is the servant girl, is crying out, and she has this kid with her, and she's asking God to help, right? Like, God, like, where are you, basically? Um, and in that moment, basically, God reveals himself and speaks to Hagar and says, "I have heard the voice of your son Ishmael," and which implies that he was praying, you could say.
Yep.
And essentially in this dry desert, she's crying out. She's saying, "We don't have water. We don't have food. We don't have anything." God opens up her eyes, and in that same place where she was, she sees a well, like a fountain of water. And there had to, that it's not that that well audit like just appeared out of nowhere like a miracle. It was there the entire time. It's just that she didn't have the capacity to see it
Yep.
because she was so focused on scarcity, so
Yes.
focused
Yes.
on lack. And this is, I think, one of the most valuable. I don't know what you think, Hunter. I mean, for me, this has been one of the most valuable things I've gained as a
Mhm.
person. I'm not even talking about
100%.
revenue. I'm not even talking about
Yeah.
money at this point. One of the most valuable things I've gained since becoming an online coach is being able to see opportunity.
Mm.
And I think this is something that so many people don't have because we're trained to be afraid. We're trained to run to security and run to
Yep.
comfort and run to
Yep.
these things. But any person that you know that's successful, any person that has a huge business or is making a lot of money or running an empire of some kind or impacting people even
Yep.
at a large scale, they have done this because they have taken a risk in a really big crossroad moment.
Yeah.
And what they saw was opportunity.
Yep.
And they leaned into optimism and leaned into possibility
Yep.
rather than leaning into what if this doesn't work? What if I lose all my money? What if I, and that's a risk that we need to assess 100%.
Yes.
I'm not
Yeah.
saying like just be stupid, but the point that I'm trying to make is that, and I think it was Sam Altman, I think he said something like this. He said, the most successful people have to have a certain level of optimistic delusion in
Mhm.
order to get to the place where
Yes.
they're succeeding. And it's, I would even push back against the word delusion because it's not a delusion if it actually happens.
Right.
And it can happen. It
Yep.
does require determination. It does require grit. It does require community and mentorship and accountability to keep going when things get difficult. But it's not a lie. It's not deception. It's not,
Yeah.
it's reality that is
Right.
possible for you.
Yeah.
But it's on the other side of your fear, on the other side of your scarcity
Absolutely.
mindset.
Yeah, dude. I say that all the
So,
time. I'm like, everything you want is on the other side of risk.
yeah.
It really is. And, and I think there's kind of especially in the church, there's kind of like an allergy to excellence in that way. There's kind of everybody's so anti-prosperity gospel, which I understand.
Yeah.
But I think, the poverty gospel is equally as bad. It's equally as harmful.
That's a word right there.
And you have to be really, really careful, right? There is a balance to strike. And you have to understand that risk, to me, equates to faith. It equates to like, I trust you, Lord, that this will be okay, right? That I don't have to be, again, I mean, this is like parable of the talents, I mean, this is just like that. I don't have to be the guy that buries everything out of the fear of that in that way, in that story, it's like you're an exacting master, right? You're so harsh, right? And I think that's almost like what we get into our head of like, if I do the wrong thing and I'm too aggressive, like I take the wrong step, like the Lord's just gonna be like, you idiot, congratulations, now you're homeless, right?
Wow.
That's where our head goes.
Wow.
And so
our view of God,
it comes in
plays
as
a
a
huge
father,
role.
as a provider. It directly, it will direct where our mind goes, right? And so, and you said, what if, that's what comes in our head. Like, what if, dude? What if I leave my job and I do this thing and it makes no money and you just, dude, it's just like catastrophic, right? But I love like even just changing the phrasing of that question. It's like, but what if, dude? But what if? What if you left your job and you go out and you make 4 times as much every month, right? What if, right? What if you were able to live in this city, in this house, and drive, and not that stuff matters. Who freaking cares? But again, it's just like it's thinking in terms of possibility. And there's a way to balance all of that of like, hey, I don't need any of that stuff. I really don't. But
Mm.
if I did get it, it'd be praise God. This isn't my
Mm-hmm.
God, but praise God, right? Praise
Yeah,
God. That's
that's good.
awesome. I'm going to use this. I'm going to steward it well. And
Yeah.
this is just an evidence of his kindness that I don't
Mm.
deserve, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't have to make myself so small and belittle myself
Mm.
constantly. And because that crushes that sense of expectation, right?
Mm.
Because it's constantly putting you in this headspace of, dude, you can't do anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of things we have to be really careful of in the church, right? I was talking about this, I was on an episode on a podcast earlier, and it was, that's a big thing I see a lot in the church is a lot of people's faith revolves around them just being an idol hunter, right?
Mm.
That's all they do. That's all they do. And so if there's a thought of, man, what if I left my job and started this business? And it's like, oh, whoa, hold up. Make sure that's not an idol, right?
There's so much
Um,
fear.
and it's instantly that, right? And it's a
Super
zero sum game.
self-conscious.
It's
Yeah.
black or white,
Yeah.
and there's no neutrals. And the reality is, like, pretty much everything is neutral. It just comes down to
Mm.
the heart, right?
Mm.
And the fact is you can idolize your freaking ministry just as much as you can idolize your business or your bank account. And I've seen
Yeah.
it happen a million times, right? So it always comes down to the heart.
Yeah.
And so, but there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of scarcity,
Mm-hmm.
and that's ultimately, that's the deeper work that you're going to have to do,
Yeah.
to actually, like, be regulated and
Mm-hmm.
do this work from a place of power,
Right.
and authority, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's hard. That's the hard part. And I'm like, dude, I'm preaching to the choir here, Chris. I know you experienced that,
100%.
like I mean, here, because this is the reality, dude, is like, it's extremely rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
It's super fun. It's crazy to see yourself do things you never thought you'd be able to do. But, like,
Mm.
you have a month where you make 25, 30K, and it's the
Mm-hmm.
31st, and you wake up on the first of the next month and your Stripe account says 0. That's
Mm-hmm.
the reality of this, right? And that, even though everything is great and your business is thriving, in that
Mm-hmm.
moment, you have to really be on it. You
Yeah.
have to really have a grip on
Yeah.
your thought patterns and your actions, right?
Yeah.
Because most people would see that. And I had to explain in this way. Before it was like my last week of ministry. And there's a guy, Nick Carlisle. He's a life coach. He's out in California. I connected
Mm-hmm.
with him on Instagram several times, and I was like, we had a very similar story. He left full-time teaching, right, to go be a coach, an online coach, and 3 kids, married, like all the same stuff, right? And I was like, dude, I want to work with you. Like, I want you to help me, like, kind of get through this transition, right? So we had a call, our first call ever, my last week in ministry, and he said, bro, this is going to teach you what it means to receive your daily bread from the Lord, right?
Mm.
Because that check is not
Oh,
coming on the
man.
15th and the 30th, dude.
Oh,
It's
man.
not. You're going to have to
That's
go
a
out
word.
and get it, right? You're going to have to go out in
Wow.
expectation and do your
Yeah.
work and serve people, and
Yeah.
that is how you will get what you need, right?
Wow.
And so, but in
Different kind of
dude, that
dependence.
completely changed my perspective on it, because
Mm.
it kind of got me to realize, like, dude, this has made me so soft.
Mm.
It has made me so soft because, dude, I can most people in most jobs, dude, it's not that hard to do most jobs. And you
Right.
can kind of just jack around
And you're
you'll
still getting
get
paid.
paid. You'll
Yeah.
still get paid, dude. And it's probably not a lot. It's not as much as you want, but it's still there.
Yeah.
It's basically automatic, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I was putting so much hope into that, into that kind of, quote unquote safety. But then my mind
Mm-hmm.
started to shift, and I was watching all these guys, they're, in really good tech jobs, and they would downsize and they would get fired. Like, Texas is at will. Like, you can just get fired for no reason, right?
Yeah.
And you can just leave for no reason. There's no contractual obligation, like with most jobs, right? And so they would just get fired and let go, for no reason other than downsizing. We're cutting this team, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then those guys are completely at the mercy of being accepted by another employer.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that took months and months and months, if not years, before they got back to that other place, right? And so for me, it was really helpful. It was a big area of encouragement to know, like, but because of this, because I've taken this risk and I've, invested and gone all in on myself and I've acquired these skills that, dude, I have skills that
Mm.
can immediately be deployed no matter what I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing.
Yeah.
Right. And so even if I was, or you, if either of us were called or like assigned to
Mm-hmm.
a W-2 job or to a ministry role, we could
Mm-hmm.
still do what we're doing. We
100%.
just turn the dial back a little bit.
Yeah.
And then if we feel like it's time to leave that ministry or that job, or we get called away or we get fired from that for whatever reason, you just turn the dial back up and we're
Mm-hmm.
right back to baseline, right?
Yeah.
Because there's these skills that are
You take it
critical.
with you.
You take it with you everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, so this thing, it is a risk for sure.
Yeah.
But to me, it's just as risky, if not more so risky, to put your livelihood in the hands of a single employer that would replace you in 5 seconds,
Mm-hmm.
for no reason other than they don't like you,
Yeah. Or to work a job that you don't like or find meaningless for
right,
years.
exactly for
Right.
years, and you're just kind of like dying inside, and so and a lot of people can do that. That's their
Yeah.
personality. I think, if you're even interested in coaching, there's
Mhm.
probably a part of you where it's not just the financial currency, it's also the currency of impact. Right.
100%.
And that is probably as important as anything
100%.
else, if not more so.
Yeah.
And so, again, not right or wrong, it's just different. And you're
Mhm.
wired in such a way in which if you're not out there making impact and seeing actual change happen, you're probably not going to be that satisfied. Right.
Mm.
And that's a beautiful thing, dude.
Yeah.
That's a very beautiful thing that a
That
lot of people
burning
don't
inside.
have that burning inside to see people do better in
Yeah.
whatever way it is.
Right.
That is a beautiful thing. So you have to lead, you have to follow that lead and understand that, hey, that's just as much currency as anything else. Right.
Mhm.
And so, but I think, it was really helpful to have those conversations and just to see it. Because, yeah, it is a risk, but it's also the thing of, if you're sitting here and you want to go and build wealth, like amen, go and do it, dude, for sure.
Yeah.
But you have to understand that there's no way to get there without risking a lot. And it is
100%.
not going to happen inside of a W-2 job. Hate to say it. It's not going to, dude. It's
Somebody's gotta
straight
say
up.
it.
It is not going to happen because chances are you're not going to be the CEO of that company. And if you are, it's not going to happen for another 20 years, if that. And so if that company even exists at that point, right? And so you're going to have to understand, like, like there are a few paths, and again, it's not guaranteed, but at least it's possible.
Yeah.
Whereas
the potential is
the potential is there.
unlimited.
Whereas most people, the spot that they're in, again, unless they're like a lawyer or a surgeon or a professional athlete, I don't, maybe like you're in commercial real estate. I don't know. There are very, very few paths to get to that level outside of this is your thing. This is your IP. This is your product. This is your brain. This is your skill. And you're
free to create.
You're free to create.
You're free to make it yours.
And it's yours, and you do with it what you want, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the part that I love, because it's like just having my mind expanded to that level, and to just be like, dude, that's all possible, And what used to feel like, oh, maybe one day, or maybe you kind of have this thought of like, maybe we don't believe this, but like in another life, like in another scenario, if things had been different, I could get there, right? And all of a sudden, you're just like, oh, all right. Like, so that is in the cards, for us to do this or that, or to be here or there, or, that's completely possible. And I know that at this point, hey, it's just inputs and outputs, it's just, it's execution on the right inputs, and, having the systems in place. And again, not guaranteed, but it's a pretty good shot at it for sure.
Pretty good. Dude, thank you so much for sharing from your life experience, for being raw, being vulnerable. Yeah, it's like here on this podcast, right? And we're going to have future episodes. Our goal is not to paint this super polished, perfect picture of
Yep.
entrepreneurship.
Yep.
Because it's not.
No.
It's challenging. And, you know, one of my coaches says that if your business is not working for you yet, as in like earning you an income, etc., that means that it's still working on you. Right?
Yep.
The character development, the
Yep.
growth. Oh man, like
Yeah.
the type of person you become,
Yes.
I think is of even more value than the money coming in.
1,000%. Yeah.
So
that's a very big deal. It's a really good mindset to have. Is just like,
yeah,
you know, there's no failures, dude. It's just like things you're learning from, right? And the guys that really make it, like they just iterate all the time.
Yeah.
Right. They don't wait around while things are in entropy, right? They shift and they move and they take all of that in as useful data, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a really big deal. That's the kind of mindset you have to have. And but again, it's just dreaming bigger, you know.
Yeah.
And it's been really fun for me to work with a lot of guys that are, I mean, they're currently in ministry, right? And they're currently thinking through, you know, man, I want to go and do something and build wealth. And I remember there's one guy where he was like, yeah, so I went out and I tried to buy into this business to do this side hustle, and I essentially just got scammed. You know, it wasn't like by a coaching thing, but it was like some other, I can't remember what it was. But he's like, dude, I lost like
trading
10 grand.
or something.
Yeah, he's like, I lost 10 grand. You know, and that to him was like devastating. You know, I mean, it'd be to anybody. I mean, I just sent $10,000 to the IRS. It was terrible. But
we won't talk about that today.
Yeah, no, I'd forgotten about it until now. Thanks a lot, man. This has been great. Never coming back. No, but but from my perspective now, where I'm at, what I told him, I was like, man, I dream of a day for you in which $10,000 means absolutely nothing to you. And again, that's what's possible.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I just sent $10,000 to the IRS. Did I lose sleep over it? No. Would I have 3 years ago? Yes. That would have ruined probably that entire quarter of the year for me. That would have kept me up at night. That would have really scared me because it would have been, what if I really need that? I can't get that back very quickly. And now, you or I would both say, dude, that's just a good day.
Yeah.
A good day of sales. You know, or maybe a good week. You know, so cool. Let's just go out and do it. Right? So
keep pushing. Keep pushing,
man. Yeah.
Dude, thank you so much for being here with us, bro, for sharing about your experience. What I'm going to do as well in the description, I'm going to link Instagram, any other links that you want to share with me. So if anybody wants to connect with you, maybe even get trained to fit, to get their mindset right, to, you know, become that man of God that, you know, God is calling them to be. We'll link that. And yeah, like, comment, subscribe, send this to somebody that may need to hear it. We're here for growth. Like our purpose here is to push you to the next level, to something that you are capable of, but maybe you don't know it yet.
Yep.
So, Hunter, thank you.
Bro, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, bro. We'll chat, man.
Yes,
Take care, everybody.